Can air make shadows? Welcome to today's video, where we will be discussing the age-old question, can air make shadows? It's a question that has puzzled many people over time, and we're here to give you a detailed and scientific explanation. First, let's define what shadows are. Shadows occur when an object blocks light from a source, creating an area of darkness behind the object. So, can air block light? The answer is yes, but with some qualifiers. But before we dive into the specifics, let's have a quick overview of the topics that we will be covering in this video. We'll start by taking a look at how light travels, followed by the properties of air that allow it to block light. We'll dive into why we don't notice air shadows in our daily lives and finally conclude if air can make a shadow or not. How light travels. To understand if air can make shadows, we need to first understand how light travels. Light travels from its source in straight lines. As it travels, it can be absorbed, refracted, or scattered by various substances. When light passes through a vacuum, such as space, it remains in a straight path and doesn't deviate from its course. However, when light travels through substances such as air, water, or glass, it slows down and changes direction. This change in direction is known as refraction. The amount of light that is refracted and how much it deviates from its original path depends on the substance it's passing through. For instance, light travels faster through air than through water, so its path is less bent in air than it is in water. Properties of air that allow it to block light. We've established that light can be refracted by air. But can air block enough light to create a shadow? Air is a transparent substance, meaning that we can see through it. However, air is a gas, and even transparent gases can absorb some light. There are two main components in air, nitrogen and oxygen. Both nitrogen and oxygen have a naturally occurring state where they exist as a pair of atoms. We know these by the symbols N2 and O2. Now, when light passes through air molecules, it is absorbed and then re-emitted in a completely random direction. This process is called scattering. And it's important to note that if enough air molecules scatter the light, it can create a noticeable shadow. However, it would take a lot of air molecules to do so. Typically, when light passes through air, it is scattered so lightly that it doesn't create a shadow. The light still reaches our eyes, but it may be refracted slightly, which could result in the image appearing blurry or distorted. Why we don't notice air shadows in our daily lives. If air can block light and create a shadow, why don't we see these air shadows in our everyday lives? The answer is that we don't notice air shadows because they are so faint and transient that we can't see them. As discussed, air is a gas that can scatter some light, but it's not dense enough to create a noticeable shadow unless there is a massive amount of air present. The air all around us is scattering and absorbing light, but we simply don't perceive it as a shadow. However, under certain lighting conditions like having a very bright light source pointed towards areas of complete darkness, one might perceive air as actually casting a shadow. But in general, everyday settings do not enable us to see the shadows. Conclusion: so, can air make shadows? Yes, but only if a large mass of air scatters enough light that it becomes noticeable. The air all around us is constantly scattering and absorbing light, but it's not dense enough to create the shadows we typically think of. Hopefully, this video has helped debunk the myth of air shadows and given you a solid scientific explanation of how light travels and how air impacts it. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.